breaking news. Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault has resigned amid controversy. CTV's chief political correspondent Vassy Kapelos, she is here. Vassy, what do you know?
Ella, you're absolutely right. There is breaking news. Employment Minister and MP for Edmonton, Randy Boissonnault, according to the Prime Minister's spokesperson, have agreed that Mr. Boissonnault, the Prime Minister and Minister Boissonnault have agreed that Mr. Boissonnault will step away from cabinet effective immediately. The statement goes on to say Mr. Boissonnault will focus on clearing the allegations made against him. Minister Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor will temporarily assume responsibility as Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages, in addition to her role already as Minister of Veterans Affairs. A very, very brief, you can see, statement here from the Prime Minister's office simply saying that Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault is stepping aside from cabinet effective right now, and that he's going to focus, he says, on clearing the allegations against him. Let me provide some background here, because we have been talking for the past few days about how scrutiny on the minister has really been increasing by the minute. He apologized late last week for what he has characterized as sort of shifting claims where his own heritage is concerned. He has identified as Cree at one point, adopted by a Cree grandmother, as well as Métis. He's used different sort of iterations of that in different instances. And that all came to light over the past few weeks, largely due to reporting by the National Post. He was forced to apologize. The Prime Minister, I'm told, actually just walked into question period right now. This message, this statement announcing Boissonnault's resignation, timed very much so that the Prime Minister, in the Liberals' views, I imagine, would not have to endure tons of questions about why the minister had not yet resigned. In any event, those questions around what Minister Boissonnault had said or hadn't said around his own heritage have just come to a boil. Yesterday, the NDP joined the Conservatives in very specifically calling on the minister to resign. I should say that the minister insists there's no wrongdoing on his part, that he has said that he has confusion over his identity. Like I said, he apologized last week for that confusion in the way that he termed it. But I think it's also important to say that's not the whole story, right? It's not just about how he's presented himself. It's that he was co-owned a company that at one point bid on federal contracts, calling itself Indigenous owned. He claimed that was the work of his business partner. He wasn't aware of it, but that they were able to access certain federal contracts because they labeled themselves as Indigenous owned. That's part and parcel of all of this as well, and sort of adding to the scrutiny and the calls from the opposition for him to resign. Now, just yesterday morning, Ella, the Prime Minister was asked if he was okay with Randy Boissonnault staying in cabinet. He was in Brazil at the G20. He said that he was happy with the work that Minister Boissonnault had done on his files on jobs, on the economy, on the workforce, and on Alberta, which is, of course, he's the only cabinet minister representing Alberta around the table. And then just over 24 hours later now, it sounds like it's a very different story. So we are paying attention as question period gets underway, as ministers come in and out, and really whether the Prime Minister adds anything to this. We just got this very brief statement. I'm going to read it for you guys one more time. Breaking news here out of Ottawa. Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault stepping aside from cabinet. The statement from the Prime Minister's office reads, the Prime Minister and MP Randy Boissonnault have agreed that Mr. Boissonnault will step away from cabinet effective immediately. Mr. Boissonnault will focus on clearing the allegations made against him, and the minister who will replace him in the interim is Minister Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who is currently the Minister of Veterans Affairs. She'll add this to this portfolio. If you're counting at home, in the last month, we're up to 5 ministers now that have departed cabinet, 4 of whom are not seeking re-election. That's why they left. Minister Randy Boissonnault leaving under very different terms, but certainly puts more pressure on the Prime Minister and the people around him to shuffle that cabinet at some point in the future.
Vassy, you mentioned just before that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had been standing by Randy Boissonnault just 24 hours ago, and now there is a huge shift in that. What do you see being the reason for that, and do you think it is to appease the opposition who have been calling for his resignation?
Yeah, I mean, those are the really, really important questions, and why we're certainly waiting to hear more specifically from the Prime Minister. And if he gets any questions from the opposition, which I imagine he will, in question period, we'll look for those details. What did change, right? What new information came to light that made the Prime Minister determine that he instead, would not want Randy Boissonnault in cabinet? It sounds like it's not a forever thing. Like, for example, if he were to clear himself against this allegations, it doesn't say that he wouldn't be allowed back in. And particularly that sentence in the statement where they stipulate Mr. Boissonnault will focus on clearing the allegations made against him leads me to believe that perhaps if he did clear them, he could return. But I think what did happen, I'm not sure it's about appeasing the opposition, but what it is about is, there's politics involved here too, right? Question period was most certainly, and might still be, all about this issue. Yesterday, it was dominated by calls coming from the opposition for Minister Boissonnault to resign. It's not just the Conservatives, it's the NDP as well. The calls weren't just sort of, in the abstract, oh, he should think about this, he should reflect on it. It was very specific, right? We had members of both the NDP and Conservative caucuses standing up in the House of Commons and outside the House of Commons, calling on the minister to resign. We have people outside. I just did an interview with the president of the BC Métis Federation, who said he was losing sleep over this, that it had destroyed, in his view, the Prime Minister and the federal cabinet's sort of communications around reconciliation. He was horrified at what was going on with these sort of shifting claims around whether or not the minister is or isn't Indigenous.